Welcome to this week's episode of the Dance to Oneness podcast. We're at episode 27, and I have a special guest today, Heather Karin Nichols. For those of you who don't know Heather, she is an access consciousness facilitator for many years, actually. She's one of the oldies but goldies. Been around a while. Heather is, I know she's a joy business facilitator. She loves talking about business, but she also loves talking about bodies. And she does a lot around embodiment and movement. And she's also an X-Men facilitator.
Yeah.
So she's a great person to talk about when your psychic abilities have gone through the roof, or you're picking up on all the insanity of the world and you feel like you're going crazy, or your empathic abilities are turning into a curse rather than a gift. So
Totally.
welcome, Heather.
I know nothing about that, any of that. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
So I noticed that you just started Who Does This Belong To challenge. And I'd wanted to ask you on in a way, and I was like, actually, you know what? Who does this belong to? I've never actually done an episode on it.
Yeah, cool.
And it's funny, this question actually was the first question I found when I found Access Consciousness tools. Like I hadn't even had my bars run, and my friend Rachel O'Brien had said to me, you know, Amy, what's all this stuff you're carrying on your back? You know, I was just like suffering and struggling through life, and good one day and an emotional wreck the next day. And one day I'd be happy, the next day I'd be on the floor crying. And I said, I mean, I don't know, like and she said, is it yours? And I was like, no, like I knew right away, like it wasn't, you know? And she's like, and I knew that I just had a sense that I was carrying a lot of trauma and grief from people I cared about. She was like, Amy, you can return it to sender. Like you can let it go. You don't have to keep taking on other people's sadness. And I was like, what? Like, but I also didn't want to, like, I'm like, but I don't want other, like, I was carrying people I cared about. I was carrying their sadness because I wanted them to be happy, but I never knew that they didn't want that. Yeah. That was the first time I heard this question, like, who does this belong to, and return to sender.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. It's good. And it's funny because it's one of those tools that I think is like, you know, we're sort of like, well, it's a beginning tool, you know, like it's you learn it. It's one of the first tools you learn. So, you know, probably not potent.
Not that important.
Yeah. And I forget about it all the time myself, you know, since I've become an X-Men facilitator and since I facilitate a lot of X-Men classes and a lot of X-Men, it's more in my world because it's really like the golden tool for X-Men, because you know, X-Men are just aware times a godzillion of so many things, you know, and so many people. And that's one of our greatest capacities that nobody talks to us about. And so then it becomes all this, like all this wrongness, you know? So it's like, to me, like one of the things of just like one of the greatest freedoms has been recognizing that I'm always aware. Like I'm still aware, I'm even more aware, I'm even more aware, and I'm even more aware, you know, and none of it's actually mine. Like what's going on with my body? Gee, I wonder if this is mine. Oh, no, it's not. Okay. You know, and watching it work in this, and I would say like one of the things about the tool too is like you actually have to be willing for it to work. You know, I always say like no access tools work without your choice behind them, right? If you're not actually choosing to have something be different, then the tool, you could use the tool you want, it's not going to work, right? So you have to, but it's like, so you can use it and go like, you might be in this, you know, big, huge pile of poo, you know, and if you're willing to ask one little question like that, who does this belong to? Or also a great one is it mine, which is slightly different, but also can be great for X-Men because you don't really care who it belongs to, you know? But you can, if you're willing to go to ask that one question and have your whole universe change and the poo is gone like that, then it can work, and sometimes maybe you have to ask it a few times or whatever, but it's like the magic and miraculousness of all the tools, they can work that quickly, but we have to be willing to change that fast.
And I also add too that, like, when I first heard this question, so it's a question, right? And if you take a bars class, it's in your bars class, or maybe someone says to you sometime, hey, do you know, like 99% of your thoughts, feelings, and emotions don't belong to you. You're just picking them up from your environment. You're like a psychic SpongeBob.
Mm-hmm.
And like we can say, like people say, like, I know I'm empathic, I know I'm psychic, but knowing it and also like saying it and knowing it are like two different things. And so when I was first given this question, like, who does this belong to? I didn't know that it worked. I didn't have, like, my mind didn't like comprehend that asking a question could actually change like a bodily experience for me, or change me wanting to cry into me having space. So I didn't have like a cognitive, like, oh, figure out like this is how it works. What I did is I was willing to try it because I was desperate, and I was willing to try anything.
Yeah.
And I'd also, like, if you told me, like, stand on your head, swirl around 3 times, like, and you'll feel better, I would have done it. Like, I was just like,
totally.
Give me anything. Like,
yeah.
So I walked away with the question. Rachel said, like, use that question for 2 days. Okay, I'm going to give this a go. And so as I went out in the world, and at the time I was going to AA, and I'd go into an AA meeting and I'd be feeling really happy and light, and then with the meeting I would start dipping, And so when I go to the meeting, I go, okay, and I start to feel, ooh, I shouldn't be really happy right now because other people are sad. And then I go, who does that belong to? Return to sender. And then someone else would talk and I'd start to feel really heavy. And I go, okay, who does that belong to? Return to sender. And my mind was like, what the fuck are you doing? This is stupid, My mind was trying the whole time to get me to stop, to judge it. But I was like, no, I don't listen to my head. I don't listen to that stuff. I kept asking, who does it belong to? I did it for 3 days. I'll never forget the space it gave me and the ease. And after that, I couldn't deny anymore how psychic I really was and how much I was picking up around me.
That's so cool. What a gift, right? Because then you're like, when you get that in a way like that, where you're like, okay, I can't deny this anymore. Now you're in a position where you can start to explore the brilliance of that, the capacities of that, like how you can actually use that to create something greater and different and miraculous and all of that, But as long as you don't, like, one of my favorite Dane Heer quotes is, what you don't acknowledge doesn't exist. And if you don't acknowledge how psychic you are, it doesn't exist. You're at the effect of it, and you can't be like, cool, this is part of my brilliance. Now, how can I use this in the world to be even more dynamic and creative and, all of that than I've ever been, and then everybody else is willing to be, Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Because it was like you're walking around and you're not acknowledging how psychic you are. And then you're just taking on everyone else's trauma, drama, upset.
Yeah.
And at the effect of it, like your life is being controlled by this stuff.
Mm-hmm. Totally. And so I've been doing it for 3 days. Yesterday was the 3rd day, I think. Yeah, I started it on Sunday. I'm going to keep going. But it's been so cool because, there's also just like the thing of when you are the seaplanes really loud? Can you hear? There's seaplanes going. Okay. When you have a big jump in awareness, so, a lot of people like take access consciousness classes or just like use the tools a lot, or maybe you listen to a lot of podcasts or videos or whatever. So the more you're engaging with the tools, the more aware you become. And if you take a class, especially, like, you're going to have a huge jump in awareness from that, and you may not recognize that, or you may, but But what happens is then, so it's like there's this sort of like zone of what you're willing to acknowledge you're aware of and that isn't yours, right? And it's kind of like this where you're like, yeah, I know that's not mine, that's not mine, that's not mine. You kind of get used to it, whatever. And then you have this huge jump in awareness, right? From using the tools, playing, choosing, whatever. Now all of a sudden the zone of what you're aware of gets way bigger, you know? And so the stuff that you're aware of gets way more, you know? And so it's after you have a big change, do a big class, or just have like a big jump in awareness, it's a really, really good time to do it again. Because all of a sudden there's more information in your world and you haven't recognized yet that it's not yours. And it's been so cool for me just to, because I haven't done it as like a 3-day thing in quite a while. And I've had so much change lately, and it's just been so cool to see just like the space. Really, that's been the biggest gift, is just the space that's showing up from it. It's like, oh man, because there's things that like I've been having a lot of fun just using the tool and saying that question, even when I don't even think there's anything going on in my head. You know, like it's one thing when you're like, oh, trauma, drama, whose is it? Is it mine? Da da da. But it's another when you're just like, I'm like, there's nothing really going on in my head, but I'm still going to ask the question and still going to receive the space that it creates, you know? And so when you take it out of the cognitive and into the energetic even more, I've just been noticing how my body changes and my whole experience of the world has become so different. It's been really cool.
That's really great, because you don't actually have to wait until things are bad and awful to ask, who does this belong to?
Yeah.
Like you said, it's just like asking it throughout the day. And there is the Who Does It Belong To Access Consciousness app, and it's free. Mm-hmm. You can download it, and like it you can set a reminder and it pings you every 15 or 30 minutes, whatever you want. And when I've done that a couple of times, it'll ping me. And when I get the ping, I'm like, oh, there's nothing going on in my head though, you know? But like you said, it's like the tool's already working. You don't have to like have a problem. You can just create more space, more ease.
Yeah. Even with nothing in your head, there can be even more nothing in your head, you know?
I love that.
Cool.
Like you chose the 3 days Who Does It Belong To for a reason. You're getting space. Now what, you know? And that's why like a lot of us like will do it and then we'll stop doing it because we have to go back and create some problem as a reason to use the questions again. You know?
Totally. It's like, oh, I need to use the tools, but I can't do it unless I'm being tortured by my own awareness.
So what was your experience, Heather, when you did first hear this question? Like how did you use it? How did you play with it? Like, did you reject it? Did you receive it? Like back when you were a newbie a long time ago. What, 10 years?
I think I might have rejected it more. Like I was like, oh yeah, whatever. It's not mine. I get it. You know, I don't know that I ever, like, I think it was a while before I actually was like, I'm going to do it for 3 days, you know, like, and actually see what occurs, you know? And, you know, one of the things we've been talking about lately is this whole being a traitor to this reality thing, you know? And that's been really in my world too, as I've been playing with it this week. And I would say like, maybe perhaps why I wasn't willing to choose it in the beginning and just run with it, is because when you have that level of space and then you're like, oh, and I'm going to have even more space just because I can, you know, it's like, you're being a traitor to the rules and the regulations of this reality. You know, you're literally like, what you're being, where you're like, well, trauma drama is not my reality. Thoughts, feelings, and emotions, not my reality. I mean, that's huge. Like that in and of itself, like I don't do thoughts, feelings, and emotions. Okay. You're definitely a traitor to this reality. You're going to be called, you know, sociopathic and dumb and, you know, all these things. Right. So it's also just that willingness to be so different that you're like, oh, that's somebody's story and it's not relevant to me. It's not mine. It's not even probably theirs, you know. Who does it belong to? Actually, nobody. You know.
Well, when I first started using this tool, Who Does It Belong To, I kept getting my mother for a lot of things, you know, and I'd be like, then I'd like get pissed, that I'd taken on so much points of views from my mother. And then I realized it's actually not relevant who it comes from, like stop blaming your mother. Like you chose her, like.
And that's why I love the question, is it mine? And I give that a lot to X-Men, because when an X-Men asks, who does this belong to? They start to download all these people and universes, because X-Men are very fast, very aware.
Great grandmother, all the females in the family, like.
Yeah, but it's more like, like you can't even say the names because it's so fast. It's just a sense of like all these universes now in your world. So asking, is it mine? Is just like, oh no, the answer is just no. I don't care who it is. It's not mine.
It's not mine. Yeah. It's just the acknowledgement of that. So and I like that too. I actually do prefer is this mine? Because it's so quick. The who does it belong to is this. So we have different ways of asking this question for people who are new and haven't heard of this before. It's like, you can ask, who does it, for any thought, feeling, or emotion that comes into your world, even bodily feeling, like feeling nausea, feeling angry, whatever it is, you ask, who does this belong to? And then you can say, is this mine, someone else, or something else? Mm-hmm. And then you just return to sender with consciousness attached.
Yeah.
Sometimes the something else can be the earth requiring a contribution, and you can gift energy to the earth. So a lot of times I get something else. And for me, then movement is really helpful for me, moving energy and getting out in the earth. And then, there's something else. There's more to the something else too, but you got to do more classes to find out about that.
Totally. Well, it's funny. And this is one of the things I've been reminded this week in using the tool is like how much it applies, even when you think that's not the tool that you like. You're sort of like, you might be like, well, this is probably this issue, so I'm going to use this tool, which is when you get kind of have a lot of tools, sometimes we go, we're not as much in question, so another great question is, what is this? It's one of my favorite questions because it's just so open-ended, where was I going with that? Like just, that's been the cool thing about just asking it, just being committed to just asking it, even if I wouldn't normally think to do it. And then you get all this awareness. And one of the, it's just when you were talking about bodies and someone else, something else, I remember in Costa Rica, so we go to this place in Costa Rica up on the volcano, and it's a very, very windy road. And the drive is, windy and bumpy and whatever. And I would occasionally get kind of nauseous on that road. And then I just started asking this question. And it's not even something you would necessarily think, you might be like, oh, what does my body require? I mean, there's just a zillion tools. And that's the cool thing. You use whatever, it changes or it doesn't, and then you go on, you use something else. But I remember asking that question, like as we drove on this road, and just the nausea just went away, so it's just so cool how you never know what's gonna work, and if you stay open to, and I would say like the starting point in a way of this tool is that you, like you said in the beginning, I mean, it's like 99% of your thoughts, feelings, and emotions, 99.9999999, are not yours, So it's always probably going to do something, to ask it. And if it doesn't, then okay, cool, do something else, use another tool.
I love that. And so, but can we just look at this for a second? Because you touched on something earlier, and I was like, oh, what is that? So like, when you give people this tool, and like you said at the start, you were like, oh yeah, I know it's not mine. And you just kind of like, I got that already. But but they're not really, but then that's at the same time, then that person will come to you a day later and be like, I've got nausea, or I've got this thing. And you're like, is it yours? And so what is that? Like, what is our absolute refusal to like we say we know we're psychic, but do we really know? And do we really want to know?
Yeah, well, I would say that it's part of that kind of traitor to this reality energy. And it's like acknowledging how different you are, how aware you are, how spacious you are when you're actually being you. And I see this a lot because I facilitate X-Men classes. It's like the choice, even like the choice to take a class,
Yeah.
The choice to take one of those classes is a choice to actually be different and to acknowledge the difference that you be.
Oh.
And a lot of people, like I watch people go, yes, no, yeah, and you can perceive this thing in the world where they're like, I don't know if I'm willing to be that different, that aware, that psychic.
Oh,
Yeah.
You just answered a question in my world today, because it's like I've been looking at that as well. Like, I have people and they come and they do foundation classes and then they don't come back. Like they don't get their bars run. And basically when you get your bars run, it's like the who does it belong to for your mind.
Mm-hmm.
Like getting your bars run is like deleting all the things that you've been taking on that are not yours.
Yeah.
So you do have that energy that Heather's talking about, like that space, that ease, that relaxation, where everything comes to you with ease. And I notice like people keep saying, oh, I want to come for bars, but they don't. And they create something to not come for a bars exchange. Like they create a situation, I can't come tonight, I can't. And I look at it, I'm like, well, it's like this refusal to receive the ease. Or you can receive a little bit of ease, but not too much. And that's that piece that like, are you willing to be that different?
Yeah. And truly like a traitor to this reality and to the people in your life, because what happens also when you're that much space, when you're willing to be that much space, people in your life are like, where did you go? They're like, you're not, I can't grab a hold of you anymore, and sometimes depends on who's in your life and what that's like. But it's like a lot of times people in your life will then turn up the judgments, because relationships in this reality are all about control and people using judgment to control each other. So you stay right here, I'm here, and you're here, and I need you to stay right here so that my world doesn't get too upset. Like I can stay like I am if you stay like you are, and nobody move.
Everybody stay really solid.
Exactly.
Don't ask who does it belong to or get your bars run, because you will become lighter and happier, and then I'm going to have to fucking change.
And then you're this element of like space and movement and consciousness, and they're like, wait a minute, hold on, trying to grab you, stop you, bring you back in. And so then what a lot of people do is they'll turn up their judgments of you, or their need of you, or they'll create problems and rope you in, or you'll create problems to rope you in, where we go, oh no, but this is the comfortable zone in which we operate. And, again, as long as nobody moves, it's okay. We're going to be okay, but that's actually not the case.
No, look at our world, people.
Yeah. I mean,
so well.
I mean, this thing, this like you stay there, I stay here, nobody move. You can see how right now that's what the world is trying to do. Yeah. And it's like not working. And then the world is like, well, let's just do more control. And then it's like, oh, it's still not working. Okay, well, let's just do more control and more control, And when you like sort of pop out of that and you're like, okay, well, y'all have fun.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do trauma drama. I'm going to be space.
Yeah.
I can have ease, joy, and glory,
Even in the face of insanity. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like people are like, wait, you can't. And you're like, well, yes, I can. I can and I will.
For me, access and the who does it belong to, and getting your bars run, like it allowed me to start being what I had in my head that I knew was possible, but I couldn't really be it. Like I read all the Eckhart Tolle books and the Power of Now and the Being the Observer, and like and it made so much sense to me. Like, and I wanted to do and be what he was talking about, but I couldn't, because I was like you said, I was like solid and not moving, so nobody else was offended by me. But when I became more space, it was like I just became the observer, and it's like, oh, this was never my movie. I'm just like in a bad movie. Okay. And sometimes the movie's kind of funny, and sometimes it's good, and sometimes it's really bad, but it's not my movie. Like, and I became so much more the observer. And I really, because I just like using even the Who Does It Belong to tool in the meetings, I went to the AA meetings, really brought me like to be space, and I could observe everyone, and I wasn't like in their worlds anymore. And I think that's what you talk about with the X-Men. It's like an X-Men is so like can tap into everyone else's universe. And if you don't have this question, you'll think everyone else's universe is yours.
I mean, that's what causes, all of these, psychological, psychiatric diagnoses. And we have this 2-day X-Men class that it's called Disabilities or Abilities. And it actually has a manual that is full of information about all these different diagnoses, but both ADD, ADHD, OCD, autism, and then a whole lot more. And you look at it and it's like, this is this capacity, this wrongness in this reality is this capacity. And it's not like a recipe or a cookie cutter, it's just the starting point of a conversation about everything that you thought was wrong about you is strong, but it's interesting to see, because if you're that aware and you have no idea that it's just your awareness, and because the thing is, you can't make your awareness go away. Like, it's who you be, like that is your being, you cannot make it go away. So, but in this reality, none of that's recognized as awareness. And so people are trying to make it go away, but you can't, because it's who you are as a being, and so then it's like, well, let's define it and let's medicate it and let's manage it and let's
drink on it, drug on it.
What's that?
Drink on it, drug on it.
Exactly. Let's numb it, and which is a huge part of addiction. Like, let's numb it down so that we can actually, so that I'm numb, or whether it's, recreational drugs or for,
pharmaceutical
prescription, but it's like, so, but there's no escaping it because that's who you be. So when you go, okay, cool, all of that's the lie. And all of that is like the intensity and immensity of my awareness. Now, if I don't have to be at the effect of any of it, and I can get into the curiosity of, what is actually right about me and what is the brilliance here, and then you start to use it. And then you're like creation, and, you were talking about business. It's like, that's one of the things I love about business is just being like, just all these moving parts and the play of it and the energy and the, and bodies too, like all of it. It's like, oh, all this information, all these energies, all this awareness coming in all the time. And I'm like, yeah, it's very dynamic instead of overwhelming and crippling.
I love it. Yeah. And that's exactly what these tools can actually change for you.
Yeah.
You go from like crippled by other people's thoughts, feelings, and emotions, thinking they're yours, to actually using this as a capacity to create multiple businesses, have joy with body, travel, do what's fun, have a great fun relationship, like have the best of this reality and beyond.
And beyond. Yeah.
So Heather, is the group still open, the Who Does It Belong To thing? Are you still going with that, or how's that working?
Yeah, and the group is actually, it's just a Telegram chat that we've had for a long time, just for my creations and stuff. So it's been open for, I don't know, maybe a year or whatever, but we just kind of brought the conversation there for people that want to play. But yeah, I'm gonna keep going with it. I've been making videos every day. I don't know if I'll keep doing videos every day, but like we'll play with it. We'll keep playing with it. And I may also, I'd like to do an interesting point of view challenge, because that's these are two to me.
I was like, I want to do like a year of interesting point of view.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So these are like the two, mega tools, I would say.
Yeah.
If you live as that, like the space of both of them, you can create anything, be anything, have anything, change anything. So yeah, it's in short. And if you go heathernichols.com/Telegram, it'll take you to the Telegram chat. And again, it's not just for Who Does This Belong To, like we put other stuff in there, but it's a place where
do you have any X-Men classes? Because we talked we talked a nice bit about X-Men today. So if you have any X-Men classes coming up.
I do actually on Friday and Saturday. Yeah, I'm doing a 2-day disabilities or abilities X-Men class. And then I'm really excited. I don't do this all the time, but Sunday following it with a sex and bodies class, which is one of my classes that I've created, and having the X-Men conversation and then going into the sex and bodies conversation, just really playing with X-Men bodies and X-Men with sex. That's one of my favorite topics. It's pretty cool.
Yes.
So, yeah.
And that's online too. It's live in Seattle
and online on
okay.
Zoom. Yeah.
And you can find her www.heathernichols.com.
Nichols, Nichols.
And I have it in the comments anyway. It's up
cool.
there.
Awesome. Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much. This is awesome. Really fun.
Amazing.
Yeah,
all right, guys.
Everybody.
See you next week. Bye.
Bye.